All right, so first of all, people want to know, like, who are you? Where did you come from?
Sure. So I'm born and raised here. I grew up here, went to Firestone High School here. I left for college and law school. I moved home in 2016 when I finished law school. I worked for 2 years as a lawyer for the city. And then I quit my job and ran for city council. I got elected in 2019. I started in 2020 right before the pandemic and spent the last 3.5 years on council. So, it's a little bit about me. But, it's been a beautiful experience coming back to your hometown and then getting to know it as an adult. And then now being able to step into this leadership opportunity, it's really humbling. I haven't fully processed it, but I want to do the best job I can for folks.
You did look, last night, you did look a little shell-shocked, like, wow, this is really happening. Were you?
Yeah, I think anyone, would be willing to take the time and really, I think it's going to take time for it to set in, the city has 1,800 employees, the city has 190,000 people living in it. We have monumental issues, and I think the weight of that is a reality. At the same time, I think I've said throughout this campaign, it's not just about believing in me as a leader, it's also about figuring out how each person in this city can be a part of the solution. 190,000 person football team is how I've been saying it. And so I really do believe that. And so it's like, look, you didn't just elect me to sit back and watch me fix it. Like, we're all doing this together. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. But, it's just, we're all people. We just kind of had to process it as it comes.
Well, and I know one of the issues people are saying is like, God, he's so young, like the older people. He's 32. Does he really realize the issues you have to deal with?
Yeah, again, I've worked in city government since 2016. I've worked with every department in city government. I put my knowledge of what's going on day to day within city government alongside or better than any other candidate who's up on those stages. And so I think I'm fully read in, and I'm fully aware of the seriousness of what's going on, right? Just last week we had to sit here and have a really difficult conversation about, do we close our campaign office because of some of the protests that are going on? I was walking in some of the protests, right? I've been present and a part of these discussions. I'm not necessarily, there's a lot of pain in this community, and I think you have to listen. And then I said last night, then work to understand and then take action. But I did a lot of soul searching before I decided to run. I only wanted to put myself forward if I thought I could offer the best and strongest vision of the candidates. I think that's what we offered over this election. I think the voters agreed at a pretty substantial margin. But I also, I heard from folks of all ages, and honestly, some older folks who were often the people who would tell me, and including one guy yesterday I think I said this to you, at the Northwest Community Center, who said, this guy was 90 years old, and he said, I don't know why you keep talking about you need years and years and years of experience, right? It doesn't necessarily by itself make you qualified, right? And so I think I bring the experience of having been there in city government, but I also bring fresh and new ideas. And there's a joke that I tell, sometimes we call someone a young professional in Akron until they're like 45, 50, right? We don't have the luxury of waiting to empower a new generation of leadership. I'm not the only part of that. There's a lot of people in this community who are part of that, but I'm really excited. We're gonna build a city government that's of all ages, of all different kinds of experiences and skill sets. I'm really excited about it.
Well, and you've also been very forthright about your family, like your mom, your dad.
Yeah.
How does your dad being in prison come into all of this relating to other people? Does it affect things? Do people see you like one of them when you share that story about your father?
Yeah, I think everyone goes through stuff in their life, right? We are all struggling with one thing or another, right? I was the last day of junior year of high school when I found out that my father had been arrested, and I really haven't had a relationship with him since then because of all the stuff that came to light of kind of the second and double lives he had been leading, right? This is a difficult experience. It was just maybe, I think 4 or 5 years later that my mom passed away, right? So these were two pretty significant experiences in my life that kind of shaped how I saw the world, and also how I tried to say, okay, well, I can't control all the difficulty that's going on here, you can't control cancer, we all know these things, but I can try to do my best to control my own actions and how I live my life and give back like my mom did. right? And so that's how it's had a profound effect on me. But I do think, when sometimes, people look at me and they're like, oh, there's this Harvard kid, or, they see a lot of privilege, and there is a lot of privilege. I can cop to that. But at the same time, I've struggled and suffered, right, too. And so I think it's important, especially for those who, people sometimes put up on a pedestal, to say, look, I've got flaws, I've got challenges just like anybody else. I go and check in with a mental health professional every month to make sure that I'm doing okay, right? I want to cut through that stigma too, right? And so I think it's important to kind of open yourself up, and I think that can also help you be more empathetic for others who are struggling as well.
And so you're the first man of color, you're the first Muslim, you're the first 32-year-old, you're the first young guy. There's so many firsts. How does that affect you? How does that affect you going forward? You're the first.
Yeah. I think, it's cool. It's interesting to see that people were willing that those weren't obstacles or barriers, right? I've never felt that being Muslim was a barrier to being elected in this community, right? I've always seen a community that's embraced people who are different or might be perceived as different, when actually the values that I learned at the mosque are the same values that people learned at church or synagogue, right? Same thing with being young, right? Like there's a plus side to it, and there's perceived drawbacks too, right? And people are able to see we actually do need new energy and new ideas and kind of a boldness and a sense of urgency for a city that's been declining for a long time. But at the end of the day, I want to be a mayor for everybody, and that's something I'm going to take really seriously. There's symbolism, and symbolism is important, but a lot of this is just the blocking and tackling of everyday work, right? That's, as a ward council person, I was also the first Muslim ward council person. I was also the youngest person on council. I didn't really do my job differently in that way. Maybe I communicated differently, do social media and stuff like that. But I think I recognize that people at a basic level just want things to work let's work on safety. Let's work on our schools. Let's work on making sure we pave our roads better and plow our roads better.
And your last question, I was talking to Maria, you're not the first of a trend across the country of younger people becoming mayors.
Yeah.
And you know that.
Yes.
You had Dennis Kucinich, who they used to call the boy mayor.
Yeah.
And now you have Bibb, who's your age, and all these people across the country.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're in an exclusive group of people who want change, or do you think it's just a trend?
No, I think that there's a reality that we're recognizing that leadership doesn't have to look just one way, right? It's not just one race, it's not only men, it's not only a certain age, and really judgment has to play a lot into it. So you can have a mayor who, is young and doesn't have great judgment, and that's a big concern. That was a lot of the issue, frankly, with Mayor Kucinich, right? You can have young mayors who are really doing bold, helpful things. I was in law school when Michelle Wu had just graduated from Harvard Law School and had just started running for Boston City Council, maybe just been elected to Boston City Council. Just a few years later, she's the mayor of Boston. First woman, first person of color elected, and in a city that had older white men as mayors going back for centuries, right? And she's doing bold, progressive things. So I think that it's definitely something where it speaks to people are looking for something different. They don't trust government, and so they want to see, okay, we're not just going to get hung up on some of the old differences that used to scare us or things like that, right? But at the same time, we have to be mindful, I don't reflect every kind of diversity, right? There has never been a woman as mayor of Akron. There's never been a black person as mayor of Akron. There are a lot of symbolic steps that we should take as a community. All I could bring is my set of experiences and my life and my policies and my ideas and my vision to the table. That's what I've brought. And so I'm going to try to be as visionary as possible. I'm going to try to use my youth as much as it can help. I'm going to try to use the diversity that I have in my family, where my mom was one of 9 kids in an Irish Catholic family. One of them married a Muslim guy, one of them married a Jewish guy, one of them married a Korean guy. That's the experience I bring to the table. But at the same time, I'm not pretending like I have every experience, like I define diversity or I'm the ultimate millennial mayor, right? I'm going to be focused on the blocking and tackling of doing this job as mayor and doing the job people elected me to do, is make the city safer, work on improving our educational system in partnership with Akron Public Schools, and work on basic quality of life stuff for our city.